Okay, so we are working on the Unit 5 Quiz 1 review because we will be quizzing tomorrow in class. I am going to go over number 10 to start. So with number 10, it looks pretty tricky because we have 3 different triangles. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these 3 different triangles in a different color. So we have a blue triangle. Okay, and then let's do a pink triangle. Okay, and then let's do a yellow. It's a little easier to see which triangles we're talking about. Okay, so if we're looking at these triangles, we have a bunch of different types of triangles here. So if we're looking at this blue triangle, we are given 24 as a side length and 7 as a side length. And we want to find x on our blue triangle. So if we want to find that x, we have to look at this blue triangle and figure out what kind of right triangle we have. It's not a 30, 60, 90. It's not a 45, 45, 90. This is actually just a right triangle. And whenever we have just a right triangle, we need to use the Pythagorean theorem. So if we want to use the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to use a squared plus b squared. Sorry, phone's ringing. There we go. A and B must be our legs. So if there are legs, we're going to say that 7 and 24 are the legs of our right triangle. And x is our hypotenuse because it is across from that 90-degree angle. So here we can say, well, 7 squared is 49. Then we have 24 squared, which is 576, is equal to x squared. If we add that 576 and the 49, if we combine them, we get 625 equals x squared. And then the last step we're going to do here is we are actually going to take the square root on both sides. By taking the square root, we get rid of that x squared to become just x, and the square root of 625 gives me just 25. Okay, so that means that x is 25. Let me write that a little bit in a darker color here. Okay. So now we have a side of our pink triangle. So with our pink triangle, we know this bottom side. Okay, and if you look at this pink triangle, knowing that it is a 45, this angle has to be 45, and then we have a 90. So we have a 45, 45, 90. We should know our reference triangles by now, but the reference triangle for 45, 45, 90, we have a 1, and a root 2 for our hypotenuse. So I can look here and I know that 25 is my leg, or one of my legs, because it makes up that 90-degree angle. So I can say 25 is going to correspond to a leg of 1 on my reference. Okay, and if I'm trying to find y, then I am trying to find the hypotenuse, since that is the side across from the 90. So we're going to say y, and the hypotenuse corresponds to root 2. So from there, again, I can just cross multiply. I get y times 1 is y. And 25 times root 2 is just 25 root 2. Do not put root 50. Okay, we can't multiply the 25 and the 2 together and put them under the radical because both of them are not already starting underneath the radical. One's outside of a radical, one's inside. Okay, so we're going to leave it as 25 root 2. Okay, the last side that we need to look at, the last triangle we need to look at is the yellow triangle. So looking at that yellow triangle, we can see that we have a 60-degree angle, which would make that top angle a 30-degree angle, and then we have our 90. So this time we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that reference triangle. Again, we should have these memorized by now. We can say our short leg is 1, our long leg is root 3, and our hypotenuse is 2. So looking at this triangle, I have the 25 root 2. And that 25 root 2 is my short leg because it is across from my 30-degree angle. So my 25 root 2 corresponds to my short leg, which is 1 on my reference triangle. In order to find z, we're going to say, well, that's equal to z over, and z is my hypotenuse of my 30, 60, 90 because it is across from the 90-degree angle. So across from the 90-degree angle on my reference is 2. So again, one last time, I'm going to cross multiply. Z times 1 is z. And then 2 times 25 root 2. So I can take the 2 times the 25 to get 50. And then we keep that root 2. So we have our 3 answers. Let's see here. We have the x equals 25, y equals 25 root 2, and z equals 50 root 2. All right, moving on, we want to look at number 11. Okay. So if we're going to look at number 11, it says that the hypotenuse of a 30, 60, 90 triangle is 22. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that scenario. We have a 30, 60, 90. And it says the hypotenuse of this triangle is 22. So that's the side across from the 90-degree angle. So we have 22. It says find the length of the shorter leg. So we'll just name that x. And then the next part also says to find the length of the longer leg. And so I'm just going to name that y. Okay, so we need to do kind of A and B at the same time. Since we do have a special right triangle because it's a 30, 60, 90, I'm going to go ahead and draw my reference triangle again so that I have it. It is the same every time, 30, 60, and a 90 degrees, and we have a 1, a root 3, and a 2. Okay, so in order to find that x and y, that's what I'm going to have to use. I'm given the fact that I have a side that's 22. And we can say that that 22 corresponds to 2 on my reference triangle. Okay. I can pick X or Y to find first, but since finding the length of the shorter leg is part A, I'll just go ahead and find that first, so X. And that X corresponds to 1 on my reference triangle. So I'm going to take 2 times X, which gives me 2X, and 22 times 1, which gives me 22. In order to get X by itself, we have to divide by 2, which leaves me with X equals 11. Okay, so that is the length of my shorter leg. We have 11. Now, in order to find that longer leg, we're going to use the same thing.
Mr. Denton,
hold on,
if you
guys.
are in the building, would you please return to your room? Thank you.
Okay, so in order to find Y now, the longer leg, we're going to go ahead and use that same thing. We're saying 22, and that corresponds to 2, is equal to Y this time over, and since, oops, sorry guys, since it's the long leg, we're going to say root 3. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply to get 2 times Y is 2Y. And 22 times root 3 is just 22 root 3. From here, I'm going to go ahead and divide that 2 away to get Y by itself. And we get Y is equal to, now we can divide the 22 and the 2 by each other, okay, since 2 goes into 22. And it goes into it 11 times. And we still have our root 3. So we should end up with Y being 11 root 3. Now for part C, it's asking for the perimeter. So in order to find the perimeter of this figure, we have to add all of our sides together. So we were given the 22. We already had that side given to us. Then we found the other side was 11, and the third side was 11 root 3. So in order to find our perimeter, we just need to add all of those together. So we're going to take the 22 and the 11, which gives me 33, plus 11 root 3. And we can't combine the 33 and the 11 because the 11 has a root 3 with it. So this would actually be my final answer as far as perimeter. Now to find the area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. Okay, and the base and the height are the perpendicular lines. So we have our base here and our height here because they form that 90-degree angle. So I'm just going to plug in everything I know. I know that my area is then going to equal 1/2 times my base of 11 times my height of 11 root 3. Okay, if we multiply everything together, we get 1/2 times 121 root 3. Now, taking a half is like the same as dividing. So really, this is just going to end up being 121 root 3 divided by 2. Okay, and that's going to be my final answer for area. And you will not, oops, sorry guys. You will not have anything that difficult on the quiz for tomorrow. Okay, because that's not something we've really gone over a whole bunch. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's also look at number 12. Okay, so number 12 says that the diagonal of a square is 7 root 2 feet. So let's go ahead and draw a square. And I'm going to draw in my diagonal, which is 7 root 2. That's what it gives me. It says, well, what's the perimeter of the square? Now, we kind of did an example like this in class today. So a square has all congruent sides. We also talked about the fact that a square has all 90-degree angles. The last thing that we kind of talked about was the fact that if we have a triangle here, that is actually going to be a 45, 45, 90 because that diagonal is splitting that 90-degree angle in half. Okay, so if we have a 45, 45, 90, I'm going to go ahead and draw the reference triangle for that so that we can figure out what our side lengths are going to be in order to find our perimeter. So that 7 root 2, that's the diagonal, that's going to correspond to the hypotenuse since it's across from the 90-degree angle. So that's going to correspond to root 2 on my reference triangle. Then we also want to find x, and that's going to correspond to 1 on my reference triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross multiply. Root 2 times x is root 2x. 7 root 2 times 1 is 7 root 2. So in order to get x by itself, we're going to go ahead and divide by the root 2. Okay, which cancel the root 2's out here and here. So we end up with x equals 7. So that means that every side of my square is 7. Okay, so if it wants to know the perimeter of the entire square, then we're going to add up all of our sides. So we have 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, which is going to give me 28. And in this case, we have feet. Now, the question does not ask you for this, but if it asks you for the area of a square is length times width. So in this case, we would say 7 is our length and 7 is also our width, which would give us 49 feet squared. Like I said, it did not ask you for the area in the question, but that is something good to know how to find. Okay, let's go ahead and let's look at number 13. I do not believe that there's anything I don't think there's anything like this on your quiz, but this is a good question. So it says, is it possible for a right triangle to have the following side lengths? I'm going to go ahead and go over the second one, and I'll have you guys do the first one. So with the second one, you have to look at your Pythagorean theorem for questions like these. Okay, and you have to figure out what your leg lengths are and what your hypotenuse is. So your hypotenuse is always your longest side. And in this case, our longest side is 7. So that's going to be my c squared. The rest of them are going to go in for a and b. So we have 2 squared plus 4 squared equals that 7 squared. 2 squared is 4, 4 squared is 16, and 7 squared is 49. So we can combine to get 4 and 16 gives me 20 equals 49. If that is true, then yes, this can be a right triangle. But if that is false, like it is here, those are not equal, then this cannot be a right triangle. Okay, we did number 14 in class. Let's go ahead and look at number 15. This is worded kind of weird, so I want to make sure that I go over this one. It says that the main mast of a fishing boat is supported by a sturdy rope. Okay, so if we have a boat, and don't make fun of my drawing, and we have a mast here, I think that's what that is. It says that that is supported by a sturdy rope. So we'll say our rope is supporting that. That extends from the top of the mast to the deck. Okay, if the mast is 20 feet tall, so right here is 20 feet tall, and the rope attached to the deck is 15 feet away from the mast. So that means that this distance here is 15 feet. We want to know how long the rope is. So if you notice, this is going to give us a 90-degree angle. Whenever we have questions like this, we can't assume that it's a 30-60-90 or a 45-45-90. We have to assume that it's just a right triangle. And so that is why we use the a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. The side across from our 90-degree angle is going to be our hypotenuse. So that's here, which is x. And then we have 20 and 15 for our a and b. It does not matter what order those are in. It could have been 15 squared plus 20 squared. It does not matter as long as the x squared is your hypotenuse or your c squared. Okay, so 20 squared gives me 400. 15 squared gives me 225, which is equal to x squared. Okay, we end up with 625 is equal to x squared. And then in order to get x by itself, we're going to go ahead and take the square root on both sides. And the square root of 625 is just 25. So we have a 25-foot rope. Okay. All right, the last one we're going to look at is number 16. Okay, it says a baseball diamond is actually a square with sides of 90 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my baseball diamond. Okay, and so if we have a base here, here, and then we have home base there. Okay, it says it's a square with 90 feet. So that means that every single side must be 90. Okay. It says if a runner tries to steal second base, so they're going from first to second, how far must the catcher at home plate throw to reach second base? So how far is that catcher going to throw? Okay, and it says find your answer in simplest radical form. So if we look at just this portion of our square, we actually have a 45-45-90 because the square has a 90-degree angle that's being cut by that diagonal. So if I use the fact that I have a 45-45-90, which I'm going to pull this, oops, not that. There we go. I'm going to pull that out. Okay, so it's a little easier to look at. We have a 90 here as a leg and a 90 here as a leg. We need to find the hypotenuse in order to figure out how far that catcher is going to throw. So I'm going to draw my reference triangle. We have 1, 1, and root 2 for our hypotenuse. Okay. So we're given the side of 90. So I'm going to say 90 is corresponding to a leg of my right triangle. So it's going to correspond to 1. If I'm trying to find what I'm going to call x, it doesn't matter what you call that side here that we're trying to find. That is my hypotenuse because it is across from the 90-degree angle. Okay, across from the 90-degree angle in my reference triangle is root 2. So if we cross multiply, we get x times 1 is x. 90 times root 2 gives me 90 root 2 feet. Okay, and it says it wants it in simplest radical form, so I would leave my answer like that. Okay, that is all that I'm going to go over in this video. We will have the quiz tomorrow. So if you have any questions, just email me tonight. Have a good night, guys.